Hello crafters, this is Yana Smakula. Welcome back to my channel. Today I'm joining Colorado Craft Company for their brand new The World of Plants release illustrated by Kris. There are 4 new stamp sets to play with, 3 of which are the big and bold sets. If you have been with me for quite some time, you guys know that I'm a big fan of the big and bold sets and images in these sets. And they are, as the name suggests, really quite big, and they easily take center stage on a card, regardless of the card size. The cards I have for you today are all A2. I also have one slimline card to show you different options, but these stamps work well for other card sizes as well. Probably not too well for smaller cards, but definitely for bigger size cards. So A2, 5x7, 6x6, that sort of thing. So let's take a closer look at these. First, we have the Can't Touch This stamp set with a large potted cactus. Now, this is an A2 card base to give you an idea of the size of this image. And as you can see, it is huge. It is the size of my hand. If you want to use it on an A2 card, you will need to leave a part of this image off. You won't be able to fit the entire thing on an A2 card. Personally, I love big images like these as there is so much room to play in terms of how you want to color it. Now, the next one is called Grow Girl. And once again, this is a huge image. Now, this is a pretty flowering cactus, and you can color the top flower part any color you want to make it look, really cute and whimsical. Now, if you look at the back of the packaging, you can see beautiful examples of how these images can be colored. Colorado Craft Company always does such a great job by providing inspiration. The back of the stamp packaging always shows the image colored, giving you some ideas for your project. You have a starting point. I find this to be very helpful. And I always keep my packaging and I always refer to it when I'm coloring my Colorado Craft Company images. Now, you can also find inspiration on the Colorado Craft Company website, social media, and on their product pages. Now, these stamps also include a variety of sentiments that complement each particular image perfectly. So right here, you have everything you need to start creating your cards. The last large stamp I have is the Ready, Set, Grow. And this one has a succulent in a beautiful pot. I love the detailing on the pot. You can have a lot of fun with it. You can color it in different shades. You can create texture and more. This set, again, features many sentiments that are fitting for this image. And the back of the packaging, again, shows you a stunning example of how this image can be colored. Now, all of these stamps have coordinating dies. I only have the stamps to show you, but there are dies available for you as well. The dies are the large outline of the plants and also the outline of the sentiments. So we have 3 large sets with 1 large image in each set. There's also a mini stamp set that features all 3 images and a sentiment. Super adorable. Of course, much, much smaller in size, but nonetheless, just as cute. On the back, again, you can see the colored examples, plus the images are neatly grouped together, giving you a suggestion of how you can use them on your card by either masking or by cutting images out. And speaking of cutting, there is a coordinating die available. It cuts the 3 plants and that hard square. I love to work with images such as these, and I consider them a treat to color. Lately, I have been venturing into simple, easier coloring techniques. I have been trying to do something that is easy and approachable, and something that doesn't require a ton of supplies. Here, I started by stamping the potted cactus in alcohol marker-friendly ink onto white cardstock. The paper I am stamping on is the Simon Says stamp, 130-pound cardstock. I prefer this type of paper for alcohol marker coloring, and I just generally like to use it because of how thick it is. It is a little bit on the expensive side because of the thickness. There's also a 120-pound cardstock. It is a little bit cheaper than the 130-pound, but overall, generally, this paper is a little bit expensive, but I love it and I use it whenever I can. I use it because I always end up having very thick and sturdy die cuts, and also my coloring on this paper always looks really well. I'm using my Misty stamping tool here as I like to double stamp my images to have, a nice black outline to them. Now let's move on to the coloring portion of this video. Now I have already test colored this cactus on a scrap piece of paper, and I followed the colored example on the back of the packaging. I love how easy it was to recreate this for my card. I already had a colored idea, I had a colored image, and I just picked and matched the colors of markers, and I colored mine to look exactly the same or very similar. Now, I used Olo markers, and these are new to me markers, and they are also relatively new markers on the market. Olo markers are alcohol-based markers, just like Copic markers, and they work in the same way. I'm just learning to use my Olos, or rather learning the colors of my Olo markers and the color combinations that I can create using these, but I'm loving them so far. Now, these are compatible with Copic markers, so you can use some Olo markers, for example, some Olo colors and then some Copic colors. If you have a decent Copic marker collection, but maybe you're missing some colors or shades, you can fill those gaps with the Olo markers as they all work together well. The Olo markers are also a lot more affordable than Copics, and they seem to be just as good. Now, I went with a simple solid color application here without any blending. If you are new to coloring, if you've never tried coloring, or maybe you feel intimidated by coloring, or, if you love coloring but want to try something different, I encourage you to give this method a try. It's super simple. Now, this works particularly well with this cactus. The cactus has sections, and we can easily color each section a different shade of green without doing any blending. I did this sort of thing, the same thing on the succulent plant. I've found the Olo markers to be very juicy and easy to work with, especially when coloring these large sections. The Olo markers, and the way I have my Olo markers, so I have two colors on one marker. One side is one color and the other side is another color. So these aren't exactly like Copics in terms of marker design, where you have one color per marker and then a brush nib and a chisel nib. No, with the Olo markers, you just have the brush nib. And for me, that's good because that's the only nib that I use. And the other part of the marker is just a different color with another brush nib. Now, the markers are customizable in a sense that I can unscrew the two marker parts and rearrange the colors however I want. Right now, my markers are grouped pretty much the way that they came, and I haven't regrouped them yet, but I might do that in the future. Like I said, I'm just starting to learn Olo markers. I've had them for about a month now, and I haven't really had a lot of time to play. So I'm very excited about this opportunity to be able to color the big and bold images and also explore my Olos a little bit further. Now, you can do this simplistic type of coloring using whichever brand of alcohol markers you have, or even using other coloring mediums, colored pencils, watercolors, whatever you feel comfortable using. This is a large enough image to make it easy to use various coloring mediums. Now, I did do a little bit of blending when coloring the dirt in the pot and also the bottom section of the pot. I used the YO 2.3 and YO 2.7 Olo markers here, and you can see that I did very minimal blending and the colors blended really well together. I mean, I did not need to apply a lot of effort here. Next, I colored the pot following the printed example. So I used a yellow marker to color the triangle shapes yellow, and then a blue marker to color most of the pot blue. And I really love this pattern. It's very tribal, very Arizona-like, I would say, and you do see a lot of cacti in Arizona. So, a nice, beautiful image. Again, this was just a single color application. I did not do any blending or shading. Now, I did do quite a bit of blending underneath the pot to mimic the dirt, and here I used the same orange colors as before to create texture and shadows under the pot. I also used the zero marker, or the colorless blender as we would call it in Copics, and I used that to blend the dirt out into white. I used the same approach to color the other images, and I really loved this process. It was easy, I felt relaxed, I enjoyed both the process and the result. Now, these big and bold sets from Colorado Craft Company are simply amazing for practicing your coloring skills. I'm not a pro when it comes to coloring, but I enjoy the process, and I find the process to be therapeutic. I enjoy trying new ways to color with my markers, and I always enjoy coloring new images. And Colorado Craft Company images are at the top of my list for stamps that are ideal for coloring, regardless of the coloring technique or the coloring medium used. With the coloring done, I popped my panel back inside my Misty stamping tool and I stamped the sentiment, "Have a fan cactus birthday," and I used VersaFine Onyx Black ink. Now, I did do a little bit of stamp surgery here, as that was just a one-line sentiment and that didn't really work for me, so I cut it into 3 pieces and rearranged it a little bit differently to make it a better fit for this card. I trimmed my panel to 3¼ by 8¼ inches, and I foam mounted it onto a slimline card base. This one measures 3½ by 8½ inches. I also added a sub-sentiment here. It reads, "I'm stuck on you." I just stamped that sentiment onto a scrap piece of white cardstock, and I used my scissors to cut it into not a perfect square, a little bit of a wonky square. So I didn't use my paper trimmer. I did not use a square die. I just used scissors and I eyeballed it to have an approximate square shape. Lastly, I added some sequins from my stash to dress up this card, and I called it Done. I absolutely love the simplicity and the boldness of this project. I enjoyed the coloring process immensely. The example on the packaging made it very easy for me to color this. And because this was such a big image, I didn't worry about being too precise when doing my coloring or, the colors bleeding or that sort of thing. Overall, it was just a treat to color. And I always say this, I've colored many big and bold stamps and images in the past. And every time I do, I enjoy the process a lot. Now, here's another card I made using this same image, but I turned it into an A2 card instead of a slimline. So I had to trim part of the pot off to be able to fit this image on an A2 card. I also fussy cut the image out. So I stamped the cactus onto my background panel, the panel where I have the sentiment, and then I added a colored cactus over it using foam adhesive squares. So I didn't cut out the little needles because that would be too difficult to fussy cut, but I just cut out the general cactus shape and I added it on top of the stamped image. I also adore the mini version of this image, and here I used it on an A2 card in a grid design. So I have 3 different plants and the sentiment forming a 2x2 grid. Now, I have a video about using grids in card making. Check it out if you haven't seen it. The grid technique works particularly well when you have several small images, as we have in this smaller stamp set. And here are 2 cards I created using the other stamps from this release. Thank you so much for spending time with me today. You can find links to all of the products featured in this video in my video description below. Come back again in a few days for another video tutorial, or check out some of my previous videos. Love you guys, and I'll see you again next time.